Welcome to another episode of The Table. Sam and Caleb here with you today. The Table is where we love to have an intersection at Christ and culture. One of the things that we're talking about today, Caleb, is coronavirus, as we've been kind of talking about it for a little while, but I got an email from someone today, and it really got me thinking. Now, today is Thursday, April 16th. So, whenever you're actually finally catching this, that's when you'll know. But the question that this person kind of posed was, is the coronavirus God's judgment? And they want to have a conversation with me about it, and I'm looking forward to having that conversation with them tomorrow. And he shared an article that he had found, and then I went on my own kind of like internet sleuth digging, trying to dive down all the rabbit holes and seeing where it all went. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk to today. We're titling this episode, "Why Would God Let This Happen?" And specifically, and we can kind of, I think we're going to apply that in multiple ways throughout today. But I just kind of want to start that off. Now, we both read the article, and since we're kind of starting with that article, I just wanted to kind of ask your thoughts. What did you think about it?
Well, first, we gotta play everybody's favorite game, man.
I forgot about the favorite game.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I mean, it's my favorite game. What? Everybody's favorite time for everybody's favorite game. What is your Zoom background?
That's right. Which is the best game that could possibly be for people who are listening to this on a podcast.
The podcast listeners, man, they're just visualizing it. Yeah.
That's right. All
right. So real quick. So Sam, what is your background? Because yours is like moving.
Yeah, mine's moving. I found a website. I just Googled like Zoom live backgrounds, and they had some stuff, and I downloaded this. And this, I'm going to move over so you can really see it.
Oh.
It's, I guess from the title of it, it's snow in Japan with cherry blossoms.
That's beautiful, man.
I'm somewhere in the Orient, and I thought it was appropriate because we have so much snow today.
It's crazy. Well, so those of you who are joining us and don't really know where we are too much, Sam lives over in Greeley, which is a little further east, and I live in Fort Collins, which is a little further west and closer to the foothills. And man, I guarantee you we got like a foot. Like that's seriously what it's looking like. But how much snow have you gotten?
We have had a ton of snow. I mean, a ton of snow here.
Shoveling was not fun. It was wet and heavy and. But anyways,
where are you, Caleb? Dan wants to know.
I'm in a lovely modern flat, probably in New York. Oh, there's like I didn't realize there's a little like. Do you see this little like elephant or bear right there? Do you see where my finger is?
Yeah, I can kind of see it.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I Googled Zoom backgrounds, and this is what I got, and it looked classy. I figured I'd be a little classy today. So
that's awesome.
That light fixture is interesting. But
yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
Noel says that they haven't had any snow in Odell, Illinois. Kim says we have 7 inches and counting. Gina says we've had at least a foot of snow in Greeley. It's been a pretty wet day.
It is just nonstop snowing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of dive into this. I don't know if we want to. I think we can include a link to the article in the show notes or whatever. People want to check it out. I did not like the first half. What did you think?
Yeah, it was interesting. So just to remind everybody who's viewing and listening, it's the question. There's this question that's asked is basically, is this COVID-19 situation, is this God's judgment, right? Like, is this God's punishment on us? Is he the cause of this? Is he the reason for this? Is this all happening from the hand of God? And the article kind of goes into the trying to attempt to answer that, I guess you could say. And I mean, that right there is kind of I don't know, I guess a start is just trying to answer it. I mean, obviously we're having a podcast conversation and discussion about this. And I mean, kind of the easy softball pitch answer is that it's not really, we don't really have an answer is what's difficult.
Sure.
But obviously the conversation should happen, and it can happen, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the point of it. But I thought it was fine. I mean, it was okay. It was long enough. I think it was an interesting thought. I don't know what
Yeah.
exactly stood out to you most about it.
Well, well, the first thing is, and this is just I spent some time in the Calvinist Reformed Presbyterian world for a while, and not being in it on a regular basis reminds me of how much is focused of their focus is on both God's sovereignty and His glory. Um,
Mm,
Whereas I think where I would love to take today is talking more about God's grace and His mercy.
that's
Um,
good.
but one of the things I want to do with you actually is I want to share my screen because I want to share some stuff that there we go. Share that. And so, because I want to share some of these things that I found. So I went and I found this interesting article on the judgment of God and COVID-19. You can find all of this through Google. Here's an article that was written in the Huffington
Oh
Post.
wow.
DC pastor says God's wrath caused by LGBTQ people.
Jeez.
And then what I really wanted to get to is this Bible verse from Bible Gateway.
Yeah.
It's 2 Corinthians chapter 7. No, what am I doing? I don't
Uh,
want to. Maybe. Oh no,
you know
bad.
what's that's funny because when we were first talking about it, I thought it was Isaiah. So I was way off. So I'm glad you found it. But
Sec.
so listener, viewer, if you are seeing what Sam's talking about, this is 2 Corinthians chapter 7. You may have seen this kind of be circulated. I saw it circulated a lot over Facebook and social media. There was a lot of Christians are kind of sharing this passage. There's like a picture of it in a hard copy Bible highlighted, and what the verse says it from 2 Chronicles 7 verses 13 through 14. It says, "When I shut up the heavens so that there's no rain, or command locusts to devour the land, or send a plague among my people, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land." And so what a lot of people are seeing in this is like, you see there's another, I think maybe there is another passage that talked about fire, because people are seeing this correlation between the fire, the devastating fires that
Mm-hmm.
happened in Australia, plague, pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the passage says, with the COVID-19 crisis, obviously. And so
Mm-hmm.
people are, and which is like, I mean, that's perfectly fine to do, right? Turn to scripture and see where God has an answer, and where his word speaks on things. But
Mm-hmm.
what really kind of caused me to pause, and one of the reasons why we're talking about this is it's the people who are sharing it, whether intentional or not, or however it was being shared, made it seem like God is doing this on purpose. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like he's kind of holding something in his hand. He's like, all right, if you guys don't do this, then I'm going to, kind of this cause and effect thing, which
Mm-hmm.
is just such, I don't know. It's kind of a thought that I've had. It's a wrestling that I have had for a while about this whole,
Mm-hmm.
how does this cause and effect thing work with God?
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to a lot of what we've talked about with this whole like transactional concept of our relationship
Mm-hmm.
with God that Sam, you talk really well about. And I guess that's kind of the issue that I have with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes it seem so transactional. And so I haven't processed it out, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to say to that, Sam?
Well, I think the first thing is acknowledging that we're just wrestling with this,
Yeah.
right? And that we don't have, like, we're not some kind of like answer generators and we've got like all the perfect answers, but we want to wrestle this through together in a conversation. And also with the people who are watching right now on Facebook. So if you're watching on Facebook, feel free to comment, throw in your own 2 cents, any questions you've got, any pushback you have. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, shoot us an email. We just got an email from someone the other day in relation to our Holy Week podcast. And so anyways, just kind of getting into this, I feel like there are a couple things that are going to show up as articles. At Easter time, you're going to see like the same 10 articles get recycled about what about Thomas's gospel and Judas's gospel, and did Jesus really rise from the dead, and those sorts of things. You're going to see whenever there's a huge, terrible event, somebody somewhere, whether it's a pastor or a internet troll or whatever, they're going to say something like, this bad thing happened because fill in the blank, because the people in Sri Lanka were doing terrible things. That's why the tsunami wiped them out and killed so many people. Or in this case with coronavirus, if you've got, it's because of all the people, of all the things that we're doing in America. Pick your poison for the sin of our society.
Yeah, you can fill in the blank with whatever you want.
Exactly.
Whatever your enemy is, kind of. And that's what has stood out
Yes.
to me about the articles that you're talking about.
And people are doing that now. And sometimes they're not doing it because of God, right? They're not saying God is judging, but it's this like, okay, so the reason why we're having coronavirus is because of climate change. Or the reason why we're having coronavirus is because of no prayer in schools or XYZ. And the problem, because, and Gina is making this comment, is because we live in a sinful world. And the reason why we have suffering and the reason why there is brokenness and the reason why there is pain is ultimately because this world is broken and messed up. Yeah. And in a very real sense, these sorts of events remind us that we are not meant for this world, right? Mm-hmm. That our hope is in the world to come, in the remaking of this world and being new and made over and made perfect.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. And I think that's it in a nutshell, which, is frustrating for a lot of us, right? Because we want that answer. We want the why, right? Like, and that's a whole question we're asking, like, why did God let this happen, right? Because we want that why. It's what was the cause that resulted in this effect? Yes. And unfortunately, there isn't some easy fill in the blank answer other than the answer of it is a broken and sinful world where there is, when God created, everything was perfect and was running according to his will and his plan. And then when sin entered the world, everything was kind of skewed, right? Like off kilter. And as a result, things are not working the way that they're supposed to be, which is really what we believe is the reason why there's, natural disasters, right? Like even creation is broken. Isn't it the Romans passage, right? That says creation and we ourselves groan inwardly, waiting for our release, waiting for redemption, right? Like that's what I love that passage, because it says that, everything is just off. Everything is just off a little bit. And that's the reason why there's disease and plagues and poverty and sickness and tornadoes and floods and tsunamis and all these things. And like I said, unfortunately, it's not usually a satisfactory answer. However, it's true.
Well, so Dan asks in the Facebook chat, why now? Why has God, not done this sooner? And so this kind of goes up to the question of, did God cause coronavirus? Has God sent COVID-19 as a plague, right? Like to get just into like the real nitty gritty. And so I wanted to jump to Luke 19 and I think that's a very helpful thing. Now let me share my screen again.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thanks for doing that.
Click that. All right. Now, there were some present at that time who told Jesus about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifices. Jesus answered, "Do you think that these Galileans were worse sinners than all the other Galileans because they suffered this way? I tell you, no. But unless you repent, you too will all perish. Or to those 18 who died when the tower in Siloam fell on them, do you think that they were more guilty than all the other living in Jerusalem? I tell you, no. But unless you repent, you too will all perish." And I think the point of what I'm trying to get at, and I think to Dan kind of question of and kind of presupposing, is God causing this? Is God the one who has sent COVID-19? The real answer for us, and that we cannot just slide past, is God has not revealed if he has sent COVID-19 or not. God has not revealed if he is the one, if he is the cause for the coronavirus, right? We know that in this broken world that we are going to face every kind of sickness and illness and plague and death and all that sort of things. But God has not revealed to us that he has done this thing. And so I don't think it's so easy as to say, well, God's the reason why this is happening, which kind of gets into like, is God causing this to happen versus God allowing this to happen? And we could have a whole kind of conversation about that. Gina in the chat says, who said God is doing this? And well, some people think that God is doing this and that they see this, specifically coronavirus, as God's judgment,
right? God's verdict on us,
God's wrath, right? Yeah. On XYZ thing that you think is wrong and needs to go. Carol says, okay, go.
Well, no, that's fine. I guess just like it's people who and please don't get us wrong. We're not, I mean, we all do this is kind of what I'm realizing.
Yeah. Yes.
That we can, I think the problem is what I am seeing is that people are using this to kind of plug and play for their agenda, right? Like it's because these people or because of this that God is allowing this to happen. And it's just kind of their own agenda that this is what needs to change. This is what needs to be fixed. This specific thing. And so like to back up a little bit and go big picture, it's not this specific thing. It's all of sin. It's all of brokenness. It's what Gina said earlier on, that it's because our world is broken that this happens. And God is always against sin. God is always against brokenness. That is the whole reason why the resurrection happened. Because the moment that Jesus walked out of the grave, the new creation begun, that there is things going in reverse, that everything from the cross and the empty tomb on is the kingdom being ushered in. That is Jesus' whole message, that the kingdom of God is here. It's here in your midst, and it's being ushered in. That's what we as the church, as Jesus followers, are called to do. That's the epitome of the gospel. It's not just Jesus died to save you to get you out of here. It's Jesus died to save you, and he is restoring heaven and earth back together in this new creation. He is going to reverse pain. He's going to reverse death. He's going to reverse tears and sadness and sickness and natural disaster. He's going to put things to right that sin caused an issue to. So it's not, that's my frustration, I guess, is that it's not our agenda. It's not our ability to say God is doing this because of this one thing. Like, no, that's not it. Like, that's not it.
So there's several things that are getting on in the comments.
There's some great comments.
Yeah, I know. Carol says, if Satan is prowling like a lion, does he bring all this on earth, i.e. pandemic, shootings, etc.? So Carol's question is Satan the cause for sin, evil, suffering? Great question. Dan says, I believe that he holds a big part in this, meaning God makes us think about the big picture. And then he goes down a little bit further and says, take time to smell the flowers and spend time with loved ones. Noel says, seems like everyone wants to blame God for everything that's wrong in the world. Why not look at all the things God has prevented from happening, which is a really great point, right? I want to get to what you're saying and some of what's going on here. And then I'm going to read from Romans chapter 8, where you were kind of referencing a little bit earlier. And in a verse that we've been talking a lot about at the end of chapter 8, share screen. I have to talk through. Okay. Paul writes in Romans chapter 8, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. And frankly, I love this verse. And he is not speaking specifically about coronavirus, right? He's talking about the things that are going on in his own life, his own problems, the own suffering that he has. And if you look at the life of Paul, like we did in Lent, man, boy, did that guy suffer all the time. But we can understand this verse 18 for us with whatever it is that we are going through, whether it's job loss, whether it's homelessness, whether it's sickness, whether it's illness, whatever it is, to realize that whatever our present sufferings are, it is true for us also, in addition to Paul, that it's not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. You know, when people ask like, how are you doing? And I haven't talked to them in a long time. You know, one of the things I've been saying a lot is, how do I phrase it? I go, things are so good for me, it's not worth talking about the things that aren't, right? Like it does a disservice to how good things are for me and my family to add any sort of complaint. Because truly, right, that's where and at the end of time, right, that's where we're going to be at. And that's where Paul goes in verse 19. and with the verse that you were referencing earlier,
Yeah.
where creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. Then he goes on, talks about how it's broken, and
Yeah,
then,
there it is.
like chains, like childbirth. But then we get to verse 28, which is all part of this.
Yeah.
And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And then later on is one of my favorite parts, right? Where, we're more than conquerors, and then nothing in all of earth is going to separate us from the love of God. And I think this is getting to what Dan's saying is that, I don't know if God caused or allowed this or whatever, right? Because God has not revealed to me, right, what he's specifically doing, right? But I do know that God promises that he's going to use this situation for my good. He's going to use this situation for your good, that he's going to use this situation for our good. And there are so many things that I think are going on that are beneficial, right? Like the time that people are spending together as families, so the elimination of running around and doing all these things and coming to a little bit of a simpler life. There are silver linings, if you will, to this dark cloud.
Yeah, it's kind of what we talked about 2 podcasts ago, right? Kind of that dreaming of freedom question that we're so focused on when things are just going to be fixed and put back to normal, that kind of our encouragement and what we landed on is let's not miss what God is doing through this, how he's using it, because I fully believe that God works through things. And that's what we just read in Romans, right? Like God works through things for good. Now that kind of brings us back to that question of cause or allows, which who knows, right? Like I really truly believe that God just allows things to happen. We kind of see that in Job, right? We kind of see that in certain instances and examples. But I truly believe, and hopefully, if we're a Jesus follower, we believe that God is going to take a terrible, broken, terrible, bad situation, and he's going to bring good through it and from it. And who knows what that looks like. And I've seen a lot of good come through this situation in my life. Now, if you're watching on Facebook or if you're listening in podcasts, what I said, I kind of preached on this a few weeks ago. I don't believe that God is causing this. I don't think that this is, I don't think God is causing this. I do think that he's going to work through it, and he has worked through it. It doesn't take away from how terrible it is, right? Like you can still be looking at the positives and still be optimistic and still see the good from it, and still be fed up and still be grieving and still be depressed and sad and feeling lonely. Like it's kind of a both and, but that's the whole point of what we believe joy is, that joy is not happiness, that it's not fleeting. It's even in the midst of despair and darkness, we have joy because we know that the tomb is empty. We know that creation is being restored. We know that what we just read in Romans, that one day everything will be put back to right. So,
what I think would be helpful with the people who are with us right now, if you could just in the comments just share how this whole crisis has both negatively affected you and positively affected you, and would be love to be able to share that together and kind of look at that. One of the things that I've been just really kind of perusing as we're trying to work through this whole thing, and we in this question of like, why would God let this happen? And we've been kind of talking about it in this kind of big national, international sense. But in like the nitty gritty of my life, right, there are little things and we can ask, or huge things that are just very personal. And we're like, why would God let this happen to me? I have so many friends who don't have a job right now. I have a family member who's jobless and essentially going to be homeless, and they're probably going to be moving into my basement, right? There are people who have had loved ones who have died. I was recently talking to a friend, and they had a family member who died alone because no one was allowed to see this person,
Yeah.
right? There are things that are going on right now in our world that are heartbreaking, and in the midst of that kind of that evil, that pain, that hurt, that suffering, we turn to God and we ask, why would you let this happen to me? And if you had someone going through that really difficult thing, what would you say to them?
Yeah, that is tough, right? Because I think it kind of presupposes that I'm doing something right. That kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is that I've put into this relationship, right? Like I've been a good follower. It kind of reminds me of the prodigal son parable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Father, I've been with you this whole time. I've done everything you've asked. I've worked my hands to the bone and I've done all this, and you never even rewarded me, kind of thing. I mean, that's not the best way to go about it. Like I wouldn't really tell that to somebody, but because in that instance, it's more just you want to just grieve with them and sit with them in the loss, and sit with them in the loneliness and stuff. But man, it is so hard, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
like you start to kind of question your relationship. You
Mm-hmm.
question, God, what do you actually want good for me? Do you
Mm-hmm.
actually love me? Do you actually care about me? And I think so many of us, I mean, I'd even go so far as to say all of us have asked those questions, right? Something's happened in our life,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how big or small you think it is, and it's caused us to ask God, do you actually love me? Do you actually
Mm-hmm.
want what's best for me? And it's I think the thing with that is there's no good answer. Nothing's going to make somebody feel better. And so I think what's best in that moment is to allow and to encourage questions to be asked. It's what we talked about, I think, a few weeks ago of lamenting, right? Like that's perfectly fine, and that's what I kind of look at in the story of Job, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Job's friends come to him and say, "Man, you must have done something totally messed up to be
Yeah,
punished
right.
like this. Like it is totally cause and effect, Job. Like think back, dude. Like what did you do to make God do this to you?" Like, and Job's like, "No, I'm not gonna blame God. This is not his fault. He is if he's allowing this to happen to me, I know that there's some good from this. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what 40 chapters worth of stuff kind of says, 20 to 30 chapters worth. And at the end, Job finally turns to God and says, God, what the heck? Like, how could you allow this to happen to me? And God
Mm-hmm.
answers Job's friends and says, you see what Job's doing right here? Like, this is the right thing. And then
Mm-hmm.
he kind of launches into a few chapters of like, who are you to do this? But it's a super cool passage. But anyways.
Well, and it's also like you talk about Job, and what I think about is Joseph, right? Here he is, and he's living life high on the hog, and then his brothers want to kill him, but then they sell him into slavery, and then he's a slave, and then he gets falsely accused of rape, and then he gets thrown in jail. But then and this goes on for like 20 years. Like his life is like the worst, and then God raises him up, and he's the vice president of Egypt, and he's taking care of things. But it's not until Genesis 45, after this story's been going on for the last 8 chapters or something like that, when Joseph reveals himself and he says to his brothers, like, you guys meant this to happen to me for evil, but God meant it for good, and
Yeah.
he's used this to save us, to save our people, to save our family. God wanted me here in Egypt to be here so I could take care of you guys and provide you food. And so one of the big things, just as we kind of like dive into it, is I don't know how God is going to use this particular situation
Yeah.
into the future. I don't know how God is going to work it together for good. And maybe like Joseph, it's going to take 25 years to realize what happened and to look back on this moment and say, oh, wow, that's what was happening. That's how God was doing it. But we can be certain and trust that he is, and that he's present with us. I want
Yeah.
to go ahead, and then I'll go to
Yeah,
comments.
exactly. Just a brief comment. Like what you're saying is, yeah, it's going to be hard to know, 10 years from now, what is going to be the bright side that we didn't even see coming. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's putting a lot of pressure on it. And because there's such good that happens as a result of things that you don't see for lifetimes. But what you asked, what I really like is what is the good right now? that God is working from. And maybe it's something super small where it is, the good that came out of this is I get to spend more actual face-to-face personal time with my family, which what's bad about that? Like, what's small about that? Like, that's amazing. Like, every one of us who loves our family would say that is a huge bright side. And remember what I said, like, that doesn't take away from the despair and not the despair, the bad of this, right? Like, that doesn't make it okay that people are dying, that people are getting sick, that we aren't able to see our friends. Like, that doesn't make that okay. But man, there is still good that comes from it.
This is we've got a bunch of comments that have just now started to pop up, and I want to start sharing some of these. I asked everybody kind of how has the search situation either hurt or helped you, kind of getting to what we're talking about. John says that his heart pants for God anew, how he needs you, or how John needs God. Noel says the situation has helped me look for the positive in every situation. Anita says, we are adjusting to a one-income family now, and my husband has been furloughed indefinitely and trying to homeschool our kids. Kim says, positive, more time with family, more devotions, forced time, but my introverted self is actually enjoying it now. Forced us to become creative, goal-oriented. Negative, my family gets together for everything. We had our own Easter celebrations, 5 family birthdays, including Addie and Gabe, and happened since the stay-at-home order went into place. Our newborn nephew is already 2 months. And so not being able to be together in a wider sense. Carol says, I have loved getting my forever ago projects done. Love listening to several church services on Sunday mornings. Love listening to these podcasts, especially when it's addressing the current situation like yours today. Thanks, Carol. Gina says, the situation has caused me a lot of fear about my sick parents and no job for my husband. But the positive is that I've been more into his word, more connected, a better example to my children, and ultimately surrendering and learning incredible lessons. Molly says, my hurt is not having my community, and yet I am building a deeper relationship with my daughter. Not that I didn't love her to the ends of the earth, and all that downtime we have now together, we are doing and feeling closer to each other by spending and talking about things we never seemed to have before. Caleb, do you want to say anything to all of that? Because I've got another thing that I want to kind of pivot towards.
Now, I don't even know what to say to that. But what I think the response that I have is that when we do take the time to stop and look at the situation and to really rest and to see what good has come out of it, we are going to find things like, and friend, if you're a Jesus follower, then fully believe that is a gift from God, that God is giving to us as a good thing. Like God uses things for good. And I think that's the perspective that we take, right? Like, whether it's cause or allow, God uses things, and that's the truth. And so I think what friends, whoever made those comments, which of you did, like you're seeing some good things that God is bringing out of this, and that's powerful. Like, that's good.
So I want to, first, thank you so much for your honesty and transparency with some of those answers. This is an opportunity for the church to be the church, and I don't mean like a building. I mean for us to care and love and support and take care of one another. And one of the most important things that we can be doing is praying. And bringing those things to God in prayer. When Jesus teaches his disciples on prayer in Luke, he gives this example after giving them the Lord's Prayer. And he's like, listen, if you went to your friend's house at night and they didn't answer the door because it's late at night and they're asleep, what you should do is you should keep banging the door until by your sheer jerkiness, they finally get up to see what's going on. Right. And he's like, that's how you should pray. You should. That is what it means to ask, seek, and knock. Right. Is to bang on the door until somebody answers. And that is my encouragement for each and every one of us. Is to go on. Gina says, I wish you guys had a phone line for callers. That would be incredible and hilarious. That'd be awesome.
Did you see the question that Dan asked?
I wanted to pivot to that.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because I've been in and out and I'm not sure. I've missed some comments, but Dan's question is, how do you explain what is going on to someone that does not believe?
Right. And
Which
that's
is a
where,
great question, because we've kind of been approaching this as Jesus followers, as Christians, as
hmm
believers. And so, I mean,
hmm
man, neighbors, friends, family who don't have that
hmm
faith, how do we, right? Like how do we explain it?
yes.
Or how do we address it? How do we discuss it, right?
So this is where is it that I don't remember the passage now, but Paul's like, we don't mourn like people who have no hope, right? Because we do have hope. But there are people right now who are mourning who don't have hope. And for some people, their hope is in things like the government taking care of everything. And that's not going super hot, right? Or some people, their hope is in their sports team, right? And well,
And there are no
there are
sports.
no sports teams, right? Like, some people, their hope is in their job, and they can't work, or they're furloughed, or they're getting less hours, or something like that. This whole virus is wrecking all of the idols that we have in our lives that we search to for hope. And so I think, kind of like to your question, if we're talking to someone, is to share with them the concrete hope that we have, that everything is going to be okay. I mean, like, that's what I would say if I'm
Yeah.
talking to somebody, is like, listen, man, can I
Like,
tell you that everything's truly going to be okay?
man, like what a better, I mean, like maybe that is a huge good that God is working from this. Like what an amazing opportunity that is just kind of in our laps as Jesus followers to go to our neighbors
Mm-hmm.
who are struggling with despair and depression and devastation with all this. If you know me, you know I like a little alliteration. But anyways,
Mm-hmm.
who are struggling with this, and we say, man, I I totally get it. I'm in the same boat. Like, I'm in this situation. I'm struggling with this, but I believe that there's a God who loves me, who
Mm-hmm.
loves you, who loves us, who is going to work good from this. In fact, he has. Like, there's this guy named Jesus. He's,
Mm-hmm.
who loved you so much that he died on the cross, and he rose, he came out of the empty tomb, and that his whole plan that he is bringing in and starting, and that we get to be part of, is to bring the news that things are going to be put back to right. Things are going to be
Mm-hmm.
restored. That this isn't the last say. This isn't the final thing. That there is going to be some things that there is going to be good and resurrection and restoration that comes from this.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
that's, man, what a good opportunity for that, right? Like I think we saw, years ago back in 9/11, that there was
Mm-hmm.
so much, there were so many people who were asking the question we're asking, right? Like, why did God
Mm-hmm.
let this happen? And
Mm-hmm.
where do they turn to but the church? And
Mm-hmm.
so if you are watching with us on Facebook, if you're listening to our podcast and you're a Jesus follower, friends, people are coming to us, and we don't have to have the answer. That's kind of, I hope, what we're trying to demonstrate with this,
Mm-hmm.
because we are not coming out with an answer, but we have friends and neighbors and family who are coming to us and asking, what's God doing? And what an opportunity. Like, that is a wide open door, friends, for us to say, I don't know what's going on with this, but I can tell you the good that I've seen come out of it in my life. And I can tell you the good that happened a little over 2,000 years ago in a cross and a tomb. And can I tell you that story? Can I tell you the hope that I have? Can I tell you the
Mm-hmm.
joy that I have, even as as I myself don't have a job, even as I have a loved one who is hospitalized and I can't see, even as I, like, man, like that's an opportunity. And so, Dan, that is a great question. I think that the answer to how is to ask them if you can have a conversation. Ask if they've opened that door. If they've asked that question, they've opened the door, and they've given you full permission to share your faith. That everything is going to be okay. That you do have a hope.
Yeah, I want to share this with you. Do you see this picture? I
Yeah.
didn't know that there was a guy. I didn't know who said this originally, but this saying, I love this saying. Christianity is one beggar telling another beggar where he found bread, and man, like that's what we're doing here, right? Like,
Yeah.
we this situation is showing all of us that ultimately, no matter how powerful, rich, or secure we are, we're actually very insecure. that we are actually all just beggars. And you and I, friends, we know where the bread is, right? We know where the bread of life is. And what we get to do is just tell somebody else, hey, it's over here. Come over here. Come check it out. Let me share with you this awesome place where you can actually get nourished and taken care of in this crazy time.
Yeah, I think if you're watching, if you're listening, and you aren't a Jesus follower, my invitation to you is to, I don't know, ask us a question, or go to your nearest Christian friend and just say, hey, what do you see going with this? And I think what we all need to realize is that there obviously is not going to be some quick fix.
Yeah.
That we are so used to immediate solutions, quick fixes, whenever we want them, that that's not happening right now. And we need to be okay with a story that takes a while to be answered or to come to a conclusion. But what we're talking about is we're on page 123. We might not know what's coming in the next 40 pages, but we know what's written on the last page, right? Like, we know the end of the story.
Amen.
And if you are a Jesus follower, never, never, never underestimate how powerful that hope is, that we know the end of the story. Like, that is the hope that this tragedy that's happening in this chapter of the book, it's bad.
Yeah.
But we know what happens at the end. We don't know what's going to happen maybe in the middle, but we know what happens at the end. And that's what gives us hope, that even in this situation, everything is going to be okay. And so let's be the people who help remind and to show others in our community that is the hope that they can have too.
It's beautiful. Let me just kind of ask this random thing, Caleb. How much longer do you want to go? Because I have like a bunny trail that's like kind of like itching, or we can just kind of like say, this was really good, let's call it here.
What does everybody on Facebook think? Because I'm down with talking through it. I'm interested in what your bunny trail is now, and
okay,
and then we'll wrap it up after that.
Okay, I want to show a clip from YouTube, but I think Facebook would kick us off because it's from NBC's The Good Place, and so it's
direct them to it or something.
That's right. Yeah,
watch it after.
It's the trolley problem. Are you familiar with the philosophical trolley problem?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I watched that episode.
Yeah, it's a great episode. And so if you're not familiar with it, basically it's this idea that you're on a out of control trolley and you can go left or right. You cannot stop. And there's one person who's on the track to the right, and there are 5 people who are on the track to the left. For the sake of this problem, you can do nothing to save them, right? You have to choose left or right. Okay. And so the question is, what do you do? Well, why do you choose to go left or right? Do you choose the 1 life or do you choose the 5 lives? I was listening, and so here's my intro. That gets into this Freakonomics episode I was listening to today, as they were talking about how do we ration respirators? How do you choose who gets the respirator? What are the ethical and moral and philosophical underpinnings for why you choose this in a situation where there are not enough respirators for everyone? And this is just the trolley problem restated, right? Who is it that gets hit by the trolley, and who is it that gets spared? And I was trying to think, if I were to create my own ethical or moral thing, how would I do it, and what would I do? And you know what I came up with? And this would not fly. It's not constitutional. It's very unconstitutional because it's extremely discriminatory against people of a specific religion. But if I could come up with a way in which who got the respirator and who didn't, I would say Christians should not get the respirator. And if you don't know Jesus, you should get the respirator. Because in my mind, you and I know what's on the last page. You and I know what's going to happen at the very end. Yeah. You and I are taken care of and secure in an eternal kind of way, right? You and I are going to be raised on the last day, and we have that hope and that trust. And if somebody else who's out there who doesn't have that hope and trust, I'd rather hope that they would, you know, get that respirator because they need it a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
What do you think about all that?
Man, that's deep, man. That is more than a little rabbit trail. But and that is a great perspective to have, which is difficult, but it's true, right? Because we have the hope, we know what's happening at the end. And our hope then for others is that they would come to know the hope and the truth that we have too, right? Like, and so that's where this is such a dilemma, right? For healthcare people who are deciding and having to decide who gets the ventilator, who gets to live and who gets to die, because those are choices, those are questions that people are having to ask. And could you imagine how devastating that is? And I think what we realize is the question comes down to kind of worth, right? Like how much life do you have left to live? What kind of value are you to society, right? Like those are the questions people are asking that determine who gets to live and who gets to die. And when you were saying that, what came to mind is, fortunately, we have a God who didn't have to decide that, and he decided that it's both. And in fact, you know, who gets to live and who gets to die? I'm gonna die so that you get to live. You know, yes. I see myself in the thief on the cross that Jesus died for, right? Like I see myself as the person who is worthless, who doesn't have the value to society, and God says, I'm dying for you. And that's just where I took it, but it's
no, I mean, but that's exactly the point, right? In the question of the trolley problem, right? Jesus is the one who says, listen, I'll jump in front of the trolley to stop it, to save everybody else, right? And to exactly what you said, Jesus dies so that we can live, right?
Yeah,
and isn't that John 3:16, right? That God so loved the world that he sent his only son to die so that we may have everlasting life. And I just kind of butchered that a little bit at the end, but like, that's the point, right? That God, that's how much God loves us, that he wants us to live, and he sacrifices his son for you and I.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we're coming to, right? Why is God letting this happen? And why did God let this happen? We don't have an answer, but we have a person.
Amen.
Right? Like we have the hope of a person, of a God who loved us so much that he sent his son to die for us, to take that cross, who didn't stay dead, who rose back to life, who conquering death put everything into reverse, right? Who is turning that off-kilter creation back right side, right? And so that's the hope that we have. And so, viewer, listener, however you're along with us, maybe you're frustrated. I'm frustrated because we don't have the answer, obviously, because there is no easy answer. But as we said, the answer is Jesus, that we have a Savior who loves us, who died for us, who works all things for good. And that's the hope that we have. And that's the hope that we can share with those around us who are feeling hopeless right now. And so, friends, maybe that's the good that's coming out of this, is that's an opportunity God is giving us to share the amazing good news of Jesus for people who are desperate for it, who are actually searching for it. They are looking, and we are that beggar who happened to find the bread that God is giving, and God has gifted to us, that we are going to tell everybody we know that I know where the bread is, and there's enough for you. There's enough for you. There's enough for me. That's the good news that we have. So friends, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Table. Thanks so much. We got to talk about a very deep and heavy conversation today. As always, whenever we wrap up our podcast, and I think it really holds true today, and in maybe a virtual sense, we ask you, who are you inviting to sit with you? Thanks so much.